another video. Let's get it. Today's topic is going to be on accelerationism. So what is accelerationism? Mainly, we'll be talking about a couple of accelerationist movements, like with industrialized capitalism or with, communism, typically being orchestrated as the first sort of accelerationist movement. So, under accelerationism, typically people associate accelerationism with Nick Land, or they associate it with book Guattari and Deleuze, which is, I haven't actually fully read it, or really read it at all. Just seen a lot of YouTube videos on it, so hopefully I can explain it to the best of my ability, but we'll see. So, we'll start with communism. So, under the pretext of communism within accelerationism is the idea of kind of perpetuating or accelerating, hence the name, of the destruction or maybe the reformism of a given system. Now, when it comes to Deleuze and Guattari, they promote sort of a system called deterritorialization and reterritorialization. Now, reterritorialization is kind of just, like building up sort of thing, so you can think of it as like growth and decay. Deterritorialization is the stripping of specifically what that system used to look like. So when it comes to, say, for capitalism or for communism, you have the idealistic territorialization of that view. The ideal view of communism is a stateless, classless, moneyless society where everyone is working perfectly in communion with each other. No one's fighting, no one's having wars. Everyone has an equal chance and equal distribution of wealth. I can be a fisher in the morning, or rear cattle in the evening, or be a poet. Some kind of paraphrasing of what Karl Marx had said. Or with capitalism, you have the ideal version of capitalism where everyone is able to have sort of a fair chance of equal competition within society, and you need to strive and kind of fight your way up into the corporate ladder, and maybe build an invention or allow for people of the fruits of your labor to use your invention, use your products in a heavily industrialized, civilized sort of society. And then the deterritorialization, or the, maybe someone would say like the worst forms of those specific systems, could be totalitarian dictatorship, elitist control, hive mind, collective consciousness, like that of maybe neoliberalism, or that of communist dictatorship, like Stalinist Russia. What also makes it accelerationist when it comes to Marxist communistic approach is that it is that of like a linear process. So you have it through, I explained this before in my communist video, but this can then be through, primitive communism, then slavery, then feudalism, then capitalism, socialism, communism. In order to get to socialism, then eventually into communism, people had believed, especially Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels and other communist and socialist theorists, had believed that you need to allow for capitalism to finish itself off. It needs to die off. When it came to like the turn of, say, like the 1900s, there was a deep belief that eventually, either in World War One, that capitalism would eventually destroy itself. Now, through that process, then there was, obviously it didn't happen, but through that idea, that is a accelerationist idea. Let's take all of the natural resources that the industrialized capital had utilized and distribute that money evenly across other people, eliminate the classes. In Marx's case, eliminate the bourgeoisie, turn it into the dictatorship of the proletariat, which would then just be the working class, and everyone's just a working class. There is no elitist sort of prestigious class, that has distribution of wealth of the top 1% or whatever you like to say, and you distribute that more, onto the 99 or however many. With capitalism, on the other hand, Nick Land, famous accelerationist, or potentially some have argued like one of the starters of accelerationists, had argued that the accelerationist process of capitalism is innate into the capitalistic structure. Capitalism is ever changing and continuously dies off pieces of itself and re-territorializes itself into a new type of goal. That's why it's really hard to see exactly where capitalism is going, because there can be a laissez-faire economics of capitalism. There is a social democratic system of capitalism with a welfare state. There's been, neoliberal capitalism, which ends up, becoming a little bit more fascist, or those sorts of elements, with the distribution of those wealths is mainly going to the corporations, of less and less governmental regulation on those corporations, and those corporations then fuse with those corporations or businesses then eventually infuse themselves into the governmental structure. And so when they then do that, you then have, neoliberalism. They also try to, try to finance everything, marketize everything, people, places, things, ads, TV, entertainment, these sorts of things, where everything is kind of a market, everything can be a market, everything is a competition, there is always competition, those sorts of things. Other than that, you can also look at accelerationism as the sort of the either of a positive acceleration or a negative acceleration of processing. So, allow for the destruction of society in a way, so accelerate the rate of technological advancements. This is often what is talked about in accelerationist circles, like that on the left and the right, mainly of the right, where alt-right accelerationism promotes itself with technological industry and advancement, and using the capitalistic machine to eventually have technology ultimately control, moderate, and mitigate the market system, because the market system has now become so innately complex and past our processing, because we've put in so many resources into an AI generated market, where now the AI itself can just then regulate itself. Nick Land, in some regard, at least to his older works, had identified that as being a key element or a key factor in accelerationist movements, or at least within the capitalistic movement, is that you have the individual eventually, uses the market, has the means of production, has a good skill, has a good trade. Whoever kind of gets there first has that means of the market, and then you trade your resources and stuff, and provide these sorts of markets where people can buy and sell products, then of course that laissez-faire economics can move into monopolistic businesses because they don't really have any sort of government regulation, and people can, the capitalists can charge their own pricing and gouge people, but those can also then be the only people that are having the means of production within those given resources. So then what they do instead is then they have, the social welfare state, where the social welfare state incorporates the government and corporations, like I said, a little bit more, governmental regulation within those systems, and then that can also quickly then devolve into maybe less governmental regulation within the corporations, but they monopolize and mobilize into each other of government and corporation, which is often what has happened when it comes to totalitarian sort of regimes, fascist regimes, whatever you want to label it. So that can occur. Those are, those communism and capitalism are clear distinctions and depictions of accelerationism, where the system can kind of mold itself. You can't pinpoint directly of specifically what it is, and that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what capitalism is. That's exactly what communism is, because it's almost formless in some sense. The elements of capitalism or communism are present within those systems, but they can take on different forms, and the accelerationist ideas of those ideologies, accelerate. They move in time over, a course of history, where maybe some of them are disastrous, some of those ideas were disastrous and got a lot of people killed, so we reform them, we change them. It's like one of a social welfare state, of social democracy. Those are elements of socialism, those are elements of democratic capitalism that mold and fuse themselves together. Now, when you add some of those two ideas together, you might sometimes get totalitarianism, or you might get fascism, or any other variant of those things, or maybe even previously you had already gotten those specific sorts of ideas, or those specific ideologies of totalitarianism, simply because the system does that. The system accelerates into a rate that you can't necessarily manage, and so some people hope that the accelerationists of the technology within a capitalistic structure will just take care of the system itself. Yeah, hopefully I got that right. It's kind of a difficult concept sometimes to talk about and digest, so if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. Thoughts, questions, concerns, anything. I know I just uploaded a video a couple hours ago, but I had it in my camera roll a couple of days ago, just uploaded it today. Thought I'd make another video though. So hopefully that made sense with accelerationism. Thoughts, questions, concerns. Yeah, leave them in the comments. All right, peace guys.